And I think it's recording, so we'll just go with it as if it is. All right, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is how we can set up image planes. And that's going to help you as you go forward to make it a little bit easier to visualize what it is you're modeling. Well, that's fun. Can everybody still hear me? Can you hear me? I have this feeling that it just changed a whole bunch of settings for me.
Yeah, we could hear you.
Yeah, it's like it got a lot clearer. You're good.
Okay. Let me get that set up. So looks like quite a few of you are not muted. If you can mute right now, can y'all hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Thank you. All right, for everybody else, once again, make sure that you just that you get muted. And all right, well, let's get going. All right. So as I was saying, the way we're going to start is I'm going to show you how to set up your image planes. I am recording this, but there's a high likelihood that this whole process is going to fail epically. So please take notes if you need to. All right, so what I'm first going to do is I randomly selected a student's fish. So if this is yours, it's here. But I'm going to take this fish. I'm going to create a new thing from the clipboard. I'm going to adjust this image size, or actually the canvas size at this point. And I will make that 1:3:10. There's a reason I'm making this square, and that's because when I put it on an image plane in Maya, it will be a square image plane. So if you want to make sure to get it actually to the size that it is in the image and there's no distortion, I need to save this out as a squared off image. Same thing, I'm going to take this, that's a top view, and that will work because there's not just a straight front view, there's a partial front view with this. But I'm going to still take that top view, and I'm going to use that as a way of working on the fish as well. So I'm going to image, crop, canvas size, once again, 1028, there we go. All right, so now I've got two squared images. So I'm going to start with this, and I'll go File, Save As. And I am going to save to my 1202 folder, or excuse me, 2201 folder for this class. I'm going to put it in the electric flow just because that's where I have my stuff. I'm going to go to Source Images. I'm just going to drop it here. I'm going to save this as a PNG for right now. If I was applying it to a 3D model, I would save it as a Targa, but for this, I'm just going to save it as a PNG, make things easier. So fish _ side view. Save that one. Same with this file, and actually I'm going to adjust this a little bit because I want to be able to see it just a little bit more. Okay, File, Save As. Okay, and I will call this top view. Save that one as PNG as well. All right, so with those selected, now I'm going to set up my image planes. The way I do that is I need to go to the camera that I'm going to be needing the image plane set up from. So I'm going to hit the space bar, so I go into the 4-view mode. I'm going to go to the front first, or excuse me, not the front, to the side first. And from the side, because of the orientation of the fish, this is already going to work. Because as you can see, if I go to this bottom left corner, my z-axis is pointing to the left. That's the front direction. The fish needs to be facing that direction. So if I go View Image Plane, and I go Import Image, so once again, if you need to take notes right now, please take notes. In your window panel, it's View, Image Plane, Import Image. All right, we'll do a quick screenshot to make everybody's life a little bit easier. Okay, so I will post that into the main chat in just a minute. But when I import image, I'm just going to grab that side view, select open. And so that drops that in there. I'm going to go to the top view now, and I'm going to do the same thing. View, image plane, import image. I'm going to grab the top view. I'm going to open that. Now I'm going to go back to this 3/4 view, and I'm going to try and line this up and coordinate it just a little bit. Now the fish was not built to be right in the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it and drag it over just a little bit so that I can get a better feel for the scale. And I'm going to scale this up so that the front of the fish and the back of the fish line up together. Hopefully you're all seeing what I'm doing here. I may lower it down a little bit as well because I want to make sure the mouth actually lines up with where it needs to. Adjust this a little bit so I can get it mostly in line. And my model's not going to follow exactly how this is, but this gives me a good idea and gives me a good base. And also the drawing of the fish is going a little bit off to the side. It's not centered perfectly, but it doesn't need to be. I'm just getting it most of the way there. Once again, if I had another view where I'm looking at it from the front, that would be good for shaping as well. I've done a lot of models with just one image, sometimes with no. But whenever you have reference, it can really help with blocking in the model. And then I'm just moving these away from the center because that's where I'm going to build. All right, so that's how I can set up my image planes while I work. And then as I model, these allow me to have kind of a guide. All right, the next part I wanted to show, I'm not going to model the entire fish. This is where I wanted you to do research into topology of fish. And so once we're done with this portion, we're going to go back into the discussion groups, and I'm going to have you pull up some of your references and look at the way people did their fish topology. But I am going to show you just a basic process for setting up kind of a special duplication. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to block in the overall shape of the fish. This is why I wanted everybody to practice last week working from a cube and turning it into a cylinder or sphere or other forms. Before I do anything, I am going to drop in an edge loop exactly in the center. So I do this by holding Shift and Control with the Insert Edge Loop tool so that I could line it up exactly in the center at that 50% mark. And it's hard to see here because of the window being shaped the way it is. So let me slide this in just a little bit. But if I open up the modeling tools, I can adjust it so the snap steps at exactly 50%. And that way you can make sure it's exactly in the center. The reason for this is after I do this base initial model, I'm going to delete half of the model, and then we're going to build up the rest from there. So let me go back to this tool. And another thing I'm going to do really quick, I'm going to slide this over so it's visible on screen, is that I'm going to adjust the material properties of this so that it's partially transparent. That way I can actually use everything I need to as a guide. So let me open up the attribute editor. I'm going to go to the Fung, and I'm going to increase this transparency just a little bit. I'll obviously change it back, and later on I'll want to create a custom material because I don't want to leave the default. But for right now, this will allow me to look at it from other views and be able to see the drawing behind. So if I need to increase the transparency, I can. All right, so let me slide this back. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to grab this face, bring it down, and I'm just blocking in this basic form. At this point, I can make a decision about how I want to deal with the fins, whether I want these to be solid pieces of geometry or whether I want, ooh, and I messed that up really quick. So let me step back. I forgot there's two faces there now, so I need to do that and then drag down. But I can make a decision about whether I want these to be solid pieces of geometry or if I just want to model the body of the fish and have the fins come off as separate pieces of partial transparency planes. And that really comes down to a choice. So I'll show it a little bit in both ways. So for example, if I wanted to do it with the partial transparency rather than fully modeling the fish, I'm going to come in here, and I'm just using the extrude tool to pull this down, get things set up, grab these vertices, drag those up, grab both of those faces again, extrude again, and you see it's very fast for me to block this in. And I'm blocking in the larger shapes right now. I'm not worrying about a lot of the details at the moment. simply because I know I'm going to be making some changes to this later. So there's that. Let me get the front really fast. Another extrusion. Once again, I know there's going to be a lot more topology, but this just gets me the overall shape, and then we'll work it from there. You can see this process can go fairly quickly. Now, if I was just going to do the fins as separate planes, I could model those in just by themselves. So I want to take something like this, adjust it so it's 1 and 1. And so, for example, the bottom fin shape, if I take this and rotate it, I'm going to look at this from the side view. So when I move it, it only moves across 2 axes. But I can very easily start building this up inside. And I don't even necessarily need to get the shape of the fin right. All I need is kind of this geometry going out. And then I would later add in a couple of extra edge loops so that I can get some of the movement within there. But then what I could do is I could put a texture on there with the alpha channel cutting out what the fin shape is. And so that is a perfectly viable way to do it. The only thing I would need to adjust is that just like the leaves and stuff like that in 3D Modeling 2, I would want to duplicate that. And I got to move this control. Go to Mesh Display, Reverse. And so now I would have the 2 halves of the same fin. And then when you rig it, you'd want to make sure everything works together. So this is a way of approaching the fins. So if you do want to do that with transparencies, you can do that. But you really want to be aware of the effects it has. This kind of an effect works great for very low resolution fishes. So if you've got a tiny fish, like in Uncharted, if you're walking through a room and there's a little fish tank and there's a fish swimming around in there, this is a perfectly valid way to do this. If this is something that's going to be getting up closer on screen to you and you're going to be looking at more details, you probably don't want to go the alpha channel route. You probably do want to actually model out the fish. And if there is a partial transparency or translucency, then have it set up a little bit different. For example, in Finding Nemo, anything that was partially translucent, that was usually a subsurface or a subsurface scattering effect. And there are other ways of handling that. But think about how you would like to approach it. There is no absolute wrong way to do this. I want everybody to explore whatever feels right. But I'm just trying to give you a heads up that there are some benefits and drawbacks to either of these approaches. For me right now, for the rest of this demo, I'm actually going to remove that. I just wanted to give a heads up on that because, Ben, you had a question about that last week. So let's take a look at least I believe it was Ben, but anyways. But the way I would actually approach this for myself is I would want to model this out in such a way that I'm going to get the fin on here as well. So let me take a look at this. I'm going to adjust my edges slightly so that it'll start here. I'm going to bring this to here, and then I would model in those fins. I'm going to move this up just a little bit and make this fin that point. I am going to add in another edge loop right now, right here. I'm going to move this one up as well so that I get a nice look to the topology as I'm starting to work on it. And I can add more geometry in later. This is why working with it in quads, making sure it's cleaned up, helps out so much. But what I can do from here is I'm going to do an initial extrusion from the side. Actually, I'll do this initial extrusion from the top. Excuse me. And I'm going to take these and bring these up to start creating the topology for this top fin. And there's going to be a couple of things that are going to change in just a little bit, but let me at least get this base knocked out, and then I will show you how to do the duplicate special. And we'll build things up from there. But let's say I've got this fin down to here, and obviously I need some more geometry through there. I'm going to make the decision for that to actually go through the form. Come on. So I can bring this up here, and I can do more with it as well, but this will at least get me the start of everything. I can use this to help with the rounding and the other shaping. And in fact, I can bring this up here and adjust this if I need to and get a slightly different shaping and use the topology in a little bit of a different way if I need to. Anyway, but this gets me the base. I would do the front here as well, or the bottom fin as well, because it's right in the center. These other fins are coming off of the side, so those can be extruded later. But for the last of this setup, really quick, I can just grab these faces. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to extrude these down. And I'm just grabbing in two directions, as you're seeing from that handle right there. I can also, from the side, grab it in the center because it only moves along two of the axes. And just like the other one, make sure I'm bringing this down so I'm getting the shaping. And I think once more, I'm going to actually have this come up a little bit higher and get a little bit of the extra shaping in a different way. So I'll bring this here. Run an edge loop through the center there. Bring this up here. Oh, that's my problem. I went way too far. I only need the back two. I was thinking something was off. Okay, so let me fix this really quick. I'm just backstepping. Okay, now I'll do an extrusion, and it should be much, much cleaner. My bad. Okay, so once more, bring this to here, bring this down to here. And I don't want to take this too far because I don't want to create concave faces. Bring this, actually bring it down to here and then adjust from there so that it doesn't have too many problems. But I will bring, or do that center cut and adjust this just a little bit more. Now that I'm getting that lined up, because I'm handling some of the movement through the form here. And this one I'll bring out here to create that centered form. All right, so I've got the basic shape for the center. I'm also going to look overhead at this really quick, and I can see these are spread out way too far, but I don't even need to deal with that yet. All right, so here's the next part I'm going to need you to take some notes on. What I will do is I will look at this thing from the front or from the top. I will grab half of these faces and I will delete them. Now, with this, ooh, and I've got a problem here. I have an extra edge that should not be there, so let me clean that up right now before I do anything else. So delete those vertices. Because of the way this was modeled right at the center, this edge should line up exactly on center. If it does not, what you can do is you can marquee select all the vertices that should be at the center. Right here, I'm going to bring this over, and I'm going to open up my toolbox again. Actually, let me go to just the tools. I'm going to turn off retain component spacing. Let me show you what that is, though. If I have that there and I don't have that turned off, as I move things, it will try and keep that in the center of all those vertices. If I turn off retain component spacing, let me grab this again, and I'm snapping, see how everything's snapped along a single axis? You want to turn it back on once you're done, but that allows me to make sure that all of these vertices are running right along the center. So just like when you're modeling the barrel in 3D modeling one, if things aren't lined up exactly across the center, you're going to have gaps, you're going to have other issues. So make sure that everything's lined up. Okay, with everything lined up and having this built, I also want to make sure that my pivot is right there at the origin so that this will flip properly. If you've done any kind of rotation or other things like that, you also need to freeze the transforms. So modify, freeze transforms with the object selected. The reason for this is I'm going to be flipping exactly across that x-axis. So now what I'm going to do, up till now you've done duplicate, so you know, Control D or whatever else, but if I go duplicate special and I go to the checkbox, once again I'll do a quick screenshot to make life a little bit easier for you, and I'll post this to the discussion board. Crop this down. Oh. All right, so once again, anyways, edit, duplicate, special, brings up this option box. And I am not doing a copy. I want to do an instance. And what that means is this is going to be a live piece of geometry. A copy just stays static with however it was when I first created it. An instance means that it's based off of whatever the original thing was, and it's going to change with it. I'm going to group it under the parent. Along the scale, that's the X, Y, and Z. I'm going to take this X, because that's the axis I'm going to be going along. I'm going to make that negative. And just one copy. So with those settings, I'm going to do a screenshot again. That way I can have it there to post for y'all. With the settings, once again, just to make life a little bit easier. Done with that. All right, and I will select duplicate special. So now I have a live version of this fish that I can work with from here. So as I'm trying to continue work on this fish, I'm only going to be modeling half of the fish. So for example, if I come up here and I go, hey, you know, that fin needs to be a lot thinner, I can just grab these edges along the fin. And I'll actually, no, I will move it all in for a little bit. And as I move those in one direction, you notice that it's moving in from the other. And then I can come back, bring back, actually I'll deselect these two edges and move that in further until it's almost a razor point. I can then come into the center, grab this vertice, only move it along two axes and bring it up, grab that center vertice, if I can actually get it. Move that only along two axes up. Same thing, I'm just going around here and building this up. And then I'll show two other parts before I move on. Like I said, I'm not going to model the whole thing right now, but I want to show you these basic tools that are going to make your life a little bit easier as you're trying to model out your fish. All right, so I obviously know that when I look from the top view, right there, that this is already too wide. I need to bring in the sides a little bit more, and there's a lot of other things I need to change about this. So I can actually start working on that from here and then build out the rest of the forms of the fish. So for example, if I grab all of these faces across here, and I want to move these in, well, I'm going to look at that top view and go, okay, I'll probably bring those into about here. Uh-oh, I have something else. Ah, okay, it's because of where I took that in already. Going to actually bring this point out a little bit more, back out. And then re-grab these. Okay, now I'll bring those in to kind of shrink them down. Oh. And then I can do an extrusion here and bring these out and shrink this down. So this is one way of approaching it. And then I would need to manually come back and fix these things. But as you can see, I'm already getting a lot more shaping to my fish. This is, once again, why you need to look at rounding. A lot of students will leave things so that they're just square and boxy and add in extra edge loops. You need to actually shape it and form it so you get these rounded forms. If I need another edge loop to go through, like the center, instead of doing an extrusion in, which you can see the kind of problems this can create if I'm not careful with it. I can also do things like dropping in more edge loops here. So I can do an edge loop across the center. And then I can use that to help round out the form further. Or if these need to go back, I can also adjust those. You get the idea. Grab these edge loops or these vertices across here. I can pull those out, creating more rounded form. If that's not right and I need to have it maybe a little bit fatter on the bottom or something, I can pull that section out. And the idea is that you can just continue using your topology to create the shape of the fish. And as long as you're updating it on one side, it's doing it on the other. This is where you want to look at other fish and their topology. Look at where the joints are going to be. So this is something I want you to start thinking about this week. If you haven't yet, find a skeletal reference for your fish. And if you can't find one specifically for your fish, look for skeletons for fish that are similar. In general, the skeleton's going to run either up and through the top of the fish, and you'll have secondary and tertiary spines. So let me pull this up really quick. To the new window. So you can see with a lot of fish, there's that central spine coming from the head to the tail, and then there's these additional sets of spines and movements, but it's going to change based on your fish. You can see some of these have more, some of these have less. Some have mainly the single spine. But look at that, because that's going to give you an idea of how your fish is going to be need to be laid out. You want to make sure that the movements are going to be natural. Also, any place where you're going to need to bend the fish, you may need extra topology. And so by the time I'm done, I'll probably have, you know, about this much extra topology, or where the mouth is, I may need to create a shaping that's more circular. So if I look at trying to, for example, pull this back, I'm going to look at the mouth really quick. That was the last part I was going to kind of show. Or excuse me, there's this, and then I was going to look at the fins and possibly the eye. I'm going to need to look at creating some edge loop shapes that are going to make sense for this fish. So I'm going to drop this back in to create an interior of the mouth. And then I can use edge loops around this central area to create the additional topology I need. So for example, if I come here and I make this movement, well, suddenly I can create this lip shape for the fish by bringing this out. Grab. Oh, it's grabbing the wrong side. Let me get this. Okay. Grab this out. Grab this out. And then I can add additional edge loops here through the interior and make changes there as well. So I'm actually going to take off the transparency that's here. I'm going to delete my history really quick again. Okay, make this a little more solid. And I can't do a full edge loop from here because it's going to try and cut through that form. But what I can do is if I need to create an additional edge loop inside of this mouth right now, I can extrude and take this in, but this is going to create a problem I wanted to point out as well. So if I take this and extrude this in so that I can get that rounded lip shape, if you notice, it's creating some extra faces, and these are problematic because it's creating these forms on the inside. This is why you want to get most of the blocking out done before you do this. The only way to fix it is by removing those faces and then snapping to grid here to make sure that these line up again. But then I've got that form that when I do combine it, it'll work through. But this gets me the extra geometry I need to get the interior of this fish mouth and to get some of the rounded forms that I may be looking for as part of the fish's mouth. For the eye, let me come back here. I'm going to increase that transparency again just a little bit. And by the way, where I added the edge loops, I just added them to show that I could. But for you, you don't want to waste edges. If you're going to add in an edge loop, take the time to move and shift and adjust all the parts of that edge loop so that it helps support the form of the fish and so that it doesn't stay blocky. Because even there, you saw that it kind of stayed a little bit blocky for a bit, where I just added them in, didn't move them. They're still squared off shapes from the previous points, and there's nothing being added. So all of these extra edge loops actually need to be used to create the forms. And then I might do something similar at the end where I round off the fin and stuff like that. But here where I have the eye, I'm actually going to adjust this a little bit. I'm gonna move my edge loops either further down, I can add in another edge loop, I can adjust the form how I need to, but I need to make some decisions about how I want this to be formed. So right now I'm actually adjusting these forward. I'm gonna add in one more edge loop, and I can adjust this one back if this feels like it's too close. So I can take this and move this one back. You see, this is all adjustable as you go. And once again, you're just working on one half and the other half gets updated. But now with this eye in place, what I can do is I can add in additional topology. By doing this, oh, whoops, I'm doing an extrusion. If I can push the right button, there we go. And then I can use this to start creating the shaping of the eye. If I need additional topology, I can add that in as well, because right now this is not a lot of geometry, but there are ways that I can increase that without having to run it through everything else. So for example, if I really need to get some additional topology through here, but I don't want to make it super awful huge running through the rest of the body, I can be kind of tricky. So here's what I'll do. I'll bring it from this corner down to here, here, then up to that corner. And this may seem like a lot of geometry and like it's making a mess, which it kind of is, but at the same time, it's giving me the opportunity to deal with some of these issues without making the geometry go through the entire form. So this will make more sense to you here in just a second. And then here I'm connecting to, wow, I'm actually messing this up pretty bad right now. Never mind. If you need more geometry, cut more geometry in. So I can run an extra edge loop here. I can run an extra edge loop here. If I need it to have more geometry and this isn't working for me, then what I would do is make sure that the point's down here, and I would actually extrude from 4 faces down in so that I would actually have, you know, a lot more geometry. In fact, I'll do that right now. If you notice I'm kind of jumping around, this is a natural and okay part of this modeling process. So if you find yourself doing the same thing, don't stress about it. It's okay. So I will actually come back. I'm going to bring this edge loop back. So it's not exactly where I wanted it to be, but you know what? I'm going to make this choice to have extra topology right here. If I need to adjust it later, I can. I can add more topology into other areas later. But I'm making a decision here. I can also look at, hey, how are the gills going to line up? Well, that may cause me to actually adjust this topology anyway, so that I get some nice rounding for where I'm going to model in the gills. But let me grab these 4 faces now that I've been just kind of piddling around with for the last little bit. I will extrude these. And this is another way of me getting more topology here for this eyeball. Now all I need to do is form up the rounding shape for this eye. And the eye could even be done just with the texture. Yet again, this is another place where you're making decisions. You can do the whole object, not need to model this in, and you can do it just with the texture. I'll show you a couple of quick examples of how you can adjust it though in just a second. But from here, I can then use this shaping, and I can actually expand this out a little bit. I'm going to look at it from this 3/4 view, make sure nothing's too totally out of place. This isn't great right now, but I can bring this out and adjust things as needed. But what I can do from here is I can continue to extrude, whoa, not the vertices, let me grab the faces. Okay, now I can extrude, and I can raise the surface up to create like the bulging of the socket that's going to surround the eye. I can take this down in. I can actually create the eyeball shape here if I want to, or I can take this in entirely from here. Well, actually, let me do it about to here. Shrink this down just a little bit more, and then do a final extrusion in. And I can either delete those back faces or keep them there. But then I could create an additional shape. And actually, I'm going to make that 6 by 6. And the trick with this is you just need to place it in both places rather than just the one. I'm going to rotate this down 90 degrees. Because the eye is probably going to be off to the side. I'm going to make sure the iris is kind of pointing off in this direction. And I'm going to make an executive decision here where I could go through and just cut across and get rid of that center vertice. I actually want that point. So I'm going to do it this way so that it's in quads and not triangles. So you don't want 20-sided, you don't want the other stuff. But then I can move this down and into position in that eye socket. Shrink it down. And then place it. And I can do a better job of placing it than that. But once you're done here, then I could flip it and put it in the other side. So let me go back to delete all by type, history. Come back here, make it solid so it's easier to see. And then I'd be able to place this. So this is a way of doing the eyeball. And it would be the same approach for creating the fin if I chose to. So for example, the fin right here would have a similar approach to decide, okay, how much geometry do I want? Well, I probably want a little bit more coming through this fin. So I'll grab these 4 and then shrink it down. Or once again, I can just grab 2, I can grab 1. It depends on how much geometry you need, how much you think you're gonna need. And actually for this one, I'm gonna make it a little bit simpler with these underside ones. I'm gonna look at it from the side, see the rough placement. Looks like they're about here. So I'm going to extrude this, shrink this down, bring it forward, and then I'll use that as the foundation of my extrusion to create the fins on the sides. And hopefully you're getting the idea of how I can just build things up using this approach. And then if I build the fin on one side, I've got that same fin already built out on the other side exactly how I need it. And then I can manually adjust things and build up the shapes to get those fins and everything else as I extrude that further out. Anyway, so those are some approaches to dealing with the fish. Obviously, this has a lot of issues, it still needs a lot of work, but it's getting there. And you notice that I'm not keeping it squared off. I've already got this fish shape. I need to probably grab some more of these, adjust them more to get the shaping more where I want it. But it's about rounding these cube forms and giving them life. When you've got this all done and it's all clean, save versions as you go. Save a final version of this in process, like save multiple copies. When you're ready to combine, I'm going to save this really quick and take my own advice. I'm going to start by deleting the history, freeze the transforms, file, save scene as, and I will just call this fish test. But I'm going to grab both of these and go mesh combine, and then edit mesh merge, like you've learned how to do before. Adjust that threshold way down, 0.001. And then this is the model that you can then do your UV mapping for and everything else. The UV mapping, think about where your edge seams are. Can you get a split right through the center? Or would it be best to actually cut out the fin and cut the bottom? Let me do a quick demo on that. I wasn't planning to, but I figure I will because it looks like we may need it. So even with this, it's a simplified shape. I'm going to show you some tools. For those who have 3D Modeling 2 with me, I went over some of these. I believe Laura Lee probably did as well. But let me open up the window modeling UV editor. I want to cut down the edge loops as much as possible. And I'm going to look at how this is going to be blocked in. So if I UV automatic, this is just a base thing. This gets me the overall shapes and forms, and I just need to be thinking about how I want this to be put together. So I could just start sewing and moving things from there, but actually an easier way for me to approach this is if I take this and I grab the whole thing, and I'm just gonna grab all of these edges and sew everything together. So. And that's going to make an absolute jumbled mess. But what I am going to do now is I'm going to grab this, start grabbing some of these edge loops. So yet again, if you're modeling well and you're cutting things as you go, keeping it to good edge loops. Let me move this off over here. Grab this and this. Okay, I'm gonna cut those. I'm now gonna grab these faces. Let's see, actually, UV. Select shell. Now, I'll just grab it like this. Okay, let me move this off to the side. So here's one fin, and I'm actually going to make this decision that I'm going to have a cut in the fin back here as well. So I'm going to grab that edge, that edge, that edge, that edge, possibly even these ones as well. So it'll all unfold from a single spot, so cut. And this I know makes no sense to you right now, but watch what happens when I unfold. So I will unfold, and there's my shaping. I can do the same thing with most of the rest of the body. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to cut out this form. I'm just going to come along here and cut all these pieces that I don't want. Cut around this one as well, because I'll just plan on having some edge seams there. I'll cut along here. So that just double clicking this thing to select the edge loops. Get this from the back end. Oops. All right, here we go. Get all those cut. So I will cut those out. Along with those being cut, I'm going to make the decision that I am going to keep the top of this fish together so that it's clean, at least across the head, because maybe it's a flatter fish. With the actual fish, it may not be that rounded, but like let's say I want to be cute and I want to put freckles across the nose or something, then I want to make sure there's no edge seams there that are going to cause issues. I'm going to grab the interior of this mouth and cut it here. That'll be its own separate piece. I'm then going to cut across this edge. And I'm just grabbing these one at a time because the full edge loop would actually go much further through the body, but I'm just shift selecting through here. Cut to there. There's already a natural cut the rest of the way. I'm going to grab these and cut up through the bottom of the tail here. Okay, so with all of that selected, I'm going to cut. Now I'm going to just grab these and start unfolding them. So unfold that. And you see it didn't unfold exactly the way I wanted it to, so I would probably need to come in and start adjusting things manually. Okay. That's holding on in a weird way. But that's the body. I can grab each of these pieces now, and I can try unfolding them. Some of them are going to work better than others. I need to do extra cuts on this, just like I did on the fin above. But you get the idea that I can very quickly start dealing with these UVs by using these tools now. Once again, these need some more cutting. They need some more cleanliness and clarity and stuff like that. But then once I get these built up, and like I said, this is why you had to learn how to do the UV mapping by hand, because when it doesn't unfold the way you want it to, that's where you may have to come in and start manually adjusting. So if I do the unfold tool, let me grab this. Oh, okay, that tool's not working right now. All right, and so in this case, when it's not working, at least this got me most of the way there. And so now I can manually start grabbing sections of UVs and start shifting them and adjusting them and go from there to get things cleaned up. What I can even do is if I split it across the top, unfold, and then connect the two, there's other things I can play with to try and get this right. But hopefully that'll give you an idea. The final thing is then getting it to scale. So once you have all your pieces actually unfolded, like I said, this is a partial process here. I can look and say, hey, this is really high resolution here, really, low resolution there. And so I can adjust these until all the squares are roughly the same size so that I can make sure that things are the scale that they need to be. And like I said, that one's deformed and not finished. And that's just the checker box up here. But then you can lay it out in that 0 to 1 space and make sure that, like I said, this is not finished. It's horrible, but it gets you the idea. So get everything laid out in here. And then you can do the UV output and do your textures. All right, hopefully that gives you a good idea of some of the tools you can be using, some of the topology you can be looking at. I'm going to try and end this right here.